thank you. Are we recording now?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, great. All right, so if you can start recording. Okay, welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us for our latest workshop in our business support program. And today's focus is all about the power of maximizing your strengths at work. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Austin, and I'm the founder of the Really Helpful Club. Also delighted to introduce to you Caroline Edwards, who's our events director, and Rowan Gerard and Francesca Ashby-Rudd, who run Really Helpful Club in Surrey, Sussex and Hampshire. I can see Francesca's on the call. So Francesca, please do pop your contact details into the chat box. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Really Helpful Club, I thought it'd be helpful to give you some background as to who we are and what our community is all about before we introduce you to our speaker. Now, our team each come from professional corporate backgrounds. I was a senior fund manager in the city, Caroline was a leading barrister, and Rowan and Francesca both had successful careers in PR. And we've each taken career breaks, and we're now on our journey building this vibrant and fast-growing community together. So what is Really Helpful Club? Well, as many of you will know, Really Helpful Club is an online network that brings together positive and like-minded people to help and connect one another in our personal and our business lives. And we're founded on an ethos of shared advice, trusted recommendations, and a caring community. We are the go-to portal for solutions in every aspect of your life, from your health and your family to your career and your business needs. Everything that we do is about word of mouth and the power of networks. This is a high quality community that attracts positive thinking and like-minded people, people whose recommendations you can rely on, people that you can trust. And it's free to be a member, and with over 15,000 members, we are buzzing. Now, in the last year, we've come to rely on virtual contacts, online connections, and a trusted community. We're coming into our own. And since the first lockdown, we have moved our highly successful events program online, and we have an exciting lineup of events in the coming weeks and months. And moving online has allowed us to extend our reach. And in this vein, there's been so much demand to join our network that we have now launched into Surrey, Sussex, and Hampshire with our dedicated team based there. And the response has been extraordinary. Now you can see the lineup of events there. We've got 5 more talks and workshops coming up in the next few weeks and months. But if there's something there that you've missed, we have recordings of every single talk. So please do contact Caroline to see how you can get a recording of any talk that you might have missed. But also remember to visit the website regularly, look out for our newsletters, and contact Caroline about our events program. We will put the registration link into the chat box and in the communications after the event so that you can join our community if you haven't already done so. Now, the last year has been an extraordinary time in everyone's lives. The meaning of work has changed, and many of us have had a realization that perhaps we're not as happy with our work or with our career direction as we might want to be. Often our educational or our professional upbringing can have us especially aware of what we need to improve on and less aware of what our natural capacities are to generate optimal performance. Today is all about strengths, and a strengths-based approach encourages the identification and application of strengths to enhance our sense of happiness, our sense of engagement and productivity at work, and therefore increase the likelihood of achieving our potential. So whether you are wanting to step it up at work, make a change, or start a business, playing to your strengths and knowing how to find flow can really make a huge difference. And according to Gallup, people who use their strengths every day are 3 times more likely to report having an excellent quality of life, 6 times more likely to be engaged at work, and 8% more productive and 15% less likely to quit. Basically, it's really worth understanding it. Now, at Really Helpful Club, our Back to Business program of events, talks and workshops have helped over 1,500 men and women to take their next step forward. And our network is full of expert advice and support to help you. Today's workshop will be run by Really Helpful Club Directory member Natasha Chatur. Natasha is a qualified and ICF accredited coach with a corporate background. She works with highly capable individuals who are feeling lost, stuck, and not in control. And she helps them find work happiness once again. She believes passionately that at every point of work unhappiness and dissatisfaction, there's opportunity to be found. Now, just before I hand over to Natasha, a little bit of guidance about housekeeping, format, and timings. The session will last around about an hour. It's going to be very relaxed and interactive. We'll begin with Natasha speaking and sharing some slides with you. We'd ask you to please mute your screens at that point. And you have any questions, please do pop them into the chat box and we can collate them as we go along and move into a longer session of questions and answers a bit later on. Now, as we said, we'll be delighted to send you a recording of the talk. Natasha also did a talk for us previously on finding work happiness. If you missed that talk and you would like to get access to that recording, again, please remember to contact Caroline. We will register you as members of Really Helpful Club in the next days if you are not already a member. We will also register you for Natasha's newsletter in return for us sending you these recordings. And this means that you will receive our newsletters, you'll be part of our vibrant and fast-growing community. And remember, you can always unsubscribe if you wish to do so. And if you specifically don't want to receive those newsletters, you don't want to be registered, then please do contact Caroline and make this clear to her by email. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand over to Natasha.
Thank you, Sarah. Right, I'm just going to share my screen. Bear with me 1 second. Oh, sorry, tech. Hopefully you can see that now. So we're going to talk about maximizing your strengths at work, how you can positively impact your performance, your well-being, and your achievement potential. Really informal, and really we'll be happy to take questions and have some discussion at the end. So I'm going to talk a bit about the definition and the significance of strengths, talk about the benefits of applying a strengths-based approach at work, and also talk through 3 steps that you can take to getting started, how you can identify your strengths, what you can think about when it comes to applying your strengths, and how you might be able to build on them. So as we start, I'd like you to use the stamp functionality to pick from this grid of 9 options, as many as you like, which ones you would like to shift at work. So to use the stamp functionality, go to the top of your screen and there's a View Options tab. Click on View Options. In the drop-down, click Annotate, and a toolbar will come up. On the toolbar, click Stamp, and then stamp on the grid the things that you would like to improve for yourself when it comes to thinking about work and your career. So a couple of people want to be more productive, feel more engaged, increase confidence, accelerate my own growth and development, yeah. Experience less stress, be happier, improve quality of life overall. Yeah. Great. So I'm just going to clear that, bear with me. So the good news is that a strengths-based approach can help with all these elements in this grid. Strengths are the traits or the skills that you have that are considered positive. And a more specific definition is of our character strengths, which are positive parts of our personality that impact how we think, how we feel, and how we behave. So here's an example of 24 character strengths as identified by the VIA Institute on Character. And the great thing is, we all have strengths. They make us unique in how we approach things, in the interests that we have, the passion that we show, in the energy that we feel when we're doing different things. Think about the difference in how you think, in how you feel, in how you act when you are doing something that uses your strengths versus something that doesn't? And what if achieving more, whether in life or at work, was possible if we focused on our strengths? So I want you to think of two things. I want you to think of a challenge that you are facing at work and a goal that you have at work. Big or small, a challenge and a goal, and I want you to write them down. I'm just going to give you 30 seconds here to write them down. And I have got a bit of background noise. Caroline, can you give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if you can hear it or you can't hear it? You can hear the background noise.
No, I can't hear the background noise. You sound
Great.
perfect, actually.
Great. Okay, so keep those things written down to one side, and I'm going to talk more about working on our strengths. So psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls working with our strengths working in a state of flow. So think about times at work or outside of work when you have been really engaged, really focused, really productive, and found it enjoyable. When you didn't get distracted and when you were completely immersed. This is flow, where the challenge meets your skill set, or at least is in the same zone, that zone of flow. When using your strengths means that you are motivated and engaged to perform at your best. So as you can see in front of you, too much challenge for your skill set leads to feelings of anxiety. Too little challenge for your skill set leads to boredom. And thinking about strengths and when you're in flow pivots away from the focus that some of us might have experienced in education or at work, where we are encouraged to focus on our weaknesses and improve what we're not so good at. And this can take more energy than building on a natural capability. And you could also say you'll never be as good at your weaknesses as you will be at your strengths. And you will never be as good at your weaknesses if they are someone else's strengths. So what makes strength so important? What I love about strengths-based approach is that it is actually a really simple approach. It's not easy necessarily, but it is simple, and it's entirely available to every one of us. Your strengths will enable you to navigate challenge and achievement at work more effectively. I made a big change to my career path, and my sense of happiness, fulfillment, to my confidence, and ultimately to my quality of life. And I started by working out what I was good at, what I was really good at naturally, and focused what I could do differently based on that. And you might be thinking, why Mr. Bump? Well, Mr. Bump had a similar experience. So in lockdown in January, I had a support bubble and I was reading Mr. Bump to my friend's 3-year-old. And I learned how Mr. Bump was constantly getting into trouble. He was always getting in the way, bumping into people and things, causing inconveniences, and bumping into everything and everyone. And it made him feel really low until he found a job where his bumping ability became a unique strength. In an orchard where he bumped into every and any apple tree, achieving the same objective as the others, gathering the apples, in his own more effective way. He was playing to his strengths and much happier for it. So from a workplace perspective, having a strengths-based approach can affect the following. It can affect employee health. It can affect employee well-being. It can affect job performance, productivity, staff turnover, work satisfaction. A strengths-based approach has benefits for us as individuals and also for the businesses that we work for. So I want you to use the stamp functionality again, and I want you to rate on a scale of 1 to 10 your answer to these 3 questions. How aware are you of your own character strengths? How often do you use your strengths at work to approach challenges and goals? And how often do you talk about strengths within employee-manager one-to-ones? And if you're not in an employee-manager situation with work, then when you talk to anyone about work, How often do you focus on strengths? So to get to the stamp, if you're not sure, view options, top tab, on the drop down, click annotate, and on that toolbar, click stamp. Okay, so we're between a 4 and a 7 on being aware of our character's strengths. Between a 4 and a 5 and a little bit of a 7 on using our strengths. And talking about strengths between a 3 and a 6. Great. And I want you to think about and note down where you are on each of the answer to each of those questions. And think about how you might nudge yourself 1 or 2 numbers to the right. And hopefully by the end of this workshop, you might have a sense of how you can achieve that. Okay, so the benefits of a strengths-based approach. There's a lot of strengths-based research happening. There's a lot of data and results coming out, and I've highlighted a handful here, which I think are quite important to think about. So it offers control to the person and a new mindset. It gives you a sense of agency of how you might achieve something. What you need to achieve might be constant. It might be set at work. You might set it for yourself as a goal. How you achieve it, you can have some agency and it be up to you. Resilience is improved. So when you're working and playing to your strengths, you're increasing your level of self-belief, your level of confidence, and you're therefore building resilience. People who use their strengths every day are 6 times more likely to be engaged in their jobs and more than 3 times more likely to report having an excellent quality of life. People who know their strengths are also 8% more productive. And with strengths-based performance management, employees feel their manager knows and respects them, which in turn boosts performance. So quite impressive stats on the benefits of the strengths-based approach with real significant numbers on how they affect at work. So I'm just going to clear the screen again to get rid of some of the additional drawings that turned up, which is totally fine. Now, there is a watch out with strengths. They're on a continuum. So achieving peak performance requires a balanced approach of not overusing your strength. And you could apply the 80-20 rule here and think about spending 80% of your focus on developing your strengths and 20% on making sure you're not going into overdrive, mitigating your performance risks and stopping your strengths from getting in your way or becoming an energy drainer. So for example, a strength of good decision-making carries a performance risk of being too hasty in making decisions and not considering alternatives. A strength of emotional control can carry a risk of coming across dispassionate or aloof. A strength of empathy can lead to too much focus on the feelings of others and loss of your ability to offer objective support and guidance. Also watch out, this is not about ignoring your lesser strengths or your weaknesses completely, and it's not about overstating competence. A balanced approach is best. High self-awareness of all. Know what you're really good at naturally, know what you're not so good at naturally, and know what you're capable of, what your competence level is. So I'm going to give you 3 steps to getting started, some guidance on where you can go based on knowing that a strengths-based approach can be really good. And I'm going to follow up with the information in the next slide on email. So I'm going to share it with Caroline and Sarah to come on email because there's quite a lot of text in the next slide and it's really useful for everyone to have. So don't worry about writing it all down. So first of all, identify your strengths. Now, there's 3 things that I would recommend you do to approach this. One is to ask yourself 3 questions. What do you do well? What do you love doing? What is easy and natural for you that others find difficult? And think about times when you have excelled and been in flow. And with this one, I'd really recommend take, 20, 30, 40 minutes, distraction free, put those questions in front of you and really think deeply about your career timeline, about your highs and lows, about your achievements over the last however many years. And we don't often sit down and think about all the achievements and the career highs that we've had in one go. And you might be surprised at what comes up, at the themes that might start to emerge. The next thing I would really recommend you do is ask other people. There's 7 questions here that I would encourage you to ask 5 people in your life and a mixture of people. So people who know you well, but perhaps they are family, friends, colleagues, ex-colleagues. Send them an email, ask them face to face. Again, capture the answers and see what comes up for you. See what trends you spot, what patterns there might be. And this is a really interesting one because often we can be unaware of our natural capabilities because they come so naturally to us. But other people will have a real perspective of them being your strengths, that they stand out in you. This was a big aha moment for me when I did this exercise and asked people in my life. Things that I thought, well, isn't everybody good at that because I feel good at that, actually stood out as being the things that I was uniquely good at and have built my career pivot based on that. The third thing I would really recommend you do is take the VIA survey. Now, the VIA survey is free and it's online. And the VIA Institute on Character has identified 24 character strengths, which we saw earlier. And they can be used to build an individual strengths profile. So you get an individual strengths profile when you do this online. And they believe that knowing and applying your highest character strengths is the key to being your best self. And then another option is Principles U. Now, Principles U is a new one done by Adam Grant, the well-known organizational psychologist, and others. And with Principles U, you learn about archetypes you are most like, which includes your tendencies, your talents, and opportunities for growth. And it also includes other things. I haven't actually done Principles U yet. It's very new. I would really recommend VIA survey. I do that a lot with the people that I coach. And it can be a really good starting point for conversation, further discovery. And in partnership with having asked yourself those questions and other people those questions, you will have a really objective set of data in front of you. So I'm going to ask you now. Now I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I want to see everyone. So I'm going to ask you to, and if you are happy to come off video, or if you aren't, I don't know if there's another way you can do this, but I want you to say whether you're going to, which one of these 3 or how many of these 3 are you going to do for yourself after this workshop? Because as we know, learning is one thing, but actually applying the learning is a whole different ballgame, and that's where a lot of growth happens. So raise your hands or give a signal, drop it in the chat if you are going to take some time, distraction-free, to ask yourself those 3 questions. Great. Kay, Caroline, Lucy. Brilliant. Nicola in the chat. Oh, yeah, thumbs up. That's a good way of doing it. Thank you. Shelley. Yeah, Nazish. Great. Neela, Manjit. What about Debs? Sorry, missed you that. Yep, saw that. What about who's going to ask 5 people in their life? Sarah, straight in there. Patricia, Caroline. Yeah, great. Nicola, Francesca, Siva, Neela. Yeah. And this is a commitment, guys. You're raising your hand, and do it. It can feel a bit funny when you're asking people. Debs, yeah, there you go, good. But it's really, really worth it. And people really enjoy being asked these questions because they really enjoy giving you that feedback. So do it. And then who's going to take that VIA survey? Yeah, great, lots of hands, everyone. And that is, again, a really easy one, distraction-free, answer a bunch of questions and see what comes out. Good, okay. So I want you to just make a note that you have committed to doing those things. And I'm going to go back to sharing. Bear with me. Okay. Now, once you have identified your strengths, Again, it's like with learning an application, knowing your strengths and applying them, whole different ballgame. Now, it's a simple principle of applying your strengths. It's not as easy. It does take time to work out how you might do this, but it's really worth the time and effort. So start with that challenge and that goal that you wrote down at the start. Think about how you might approach each by applying your strengths. What might you do differently? And think about that. How might you apply your strengths differently when it comes to people? Relationships at home, relationships at work, with your boss, with your employees, with your peers, people in your community or socially. How might you apply your strengths differently? I have a strength of being quite efficient and organized. And so when I'm on a WhatsApp group with 10 people and everyone's saying, oh, we should do something, I tend to be the person that says, okay, well, let's go here and do this at this time. Because that's a strength of mine. And I prefer to do that. And I'm much happier doing that than reading, reams of WhatsApp threads of no one quite making a decision. How might you change your actions and behavior based on your strengths? How might it influence your behaviors? How might you express your strengths once you know what they are? How might you bring them to life in how you act and how you behave? Think about the tasks that you have. How can you approach them? Strengths first. Again, like Mr. Bump, you might do it differently, but you still get to the same goal. How can you use your sense of agency and creativity to do things in a way that you're more naturally capable of? Locations, can you use your strengths at home more? Can you use them at work more? Can you use them in the car differently? I mean, sounds a bit wild, but it all starts with just being really open and thinking about how you might use them differently. And the daily difference is a good place to start. So daily difference is, it was based on the stat that we came across earlier, that people who use their strengths every day, 6 times more likely to be engaged at work. If you were to use your strength every day, what might that look like? What might you do differently? So for example, if one of your strengths is curiosity, what might you do each day with that? How might you be curious each day? Maybe one day you might ask some questions of someone at work that you don't normally talk to. Maybe you might find out more about a project at work that interests you, but you don't actually have anything to do with. How might you be more curious about it and use it? How might you plan a different route, eat a different lunch, try a different way of presenting in your next meeting and see what happens? So really have a play with your strengths and see how you might be able to expand the use of them, extend the use of them at work and in life in a way that is energizing for you and that makes you get on the way to peak performance. It might be stretching outside of your comfort zone a little bit again, but it builds resilience and it builds confidence, and especially if you're relying on your natural capabilities to do this. So see how you can add more value to yourself, to your life, to your work by focusing on your strengths once you know what they are. And then the third thing to think about is, how do you develop from here? How will you build on your natural capabilities to perform better? So 3 questions you can ask yourself. What research can you do to know more about the stretch in your strengths? What knowledge do you need to optimize your strengths? What skills can you learn that build on your strengths? And you're probably thinking, well, hang on a second, why am I not giving you the answers? I'm just asking you a bunch of questions. But we all have different strengths. We have different lives. We have different opportunities. We have different goals. You know yourself best. You know your work environment. You know your relationships. You know the opportunities you have best. And so this is the time for agency. Taking responsibility to take action is the thing that is in your control once you know the strengths. You don't have to know the answers, but with time and effort, ideas will appear, and I can attest to that. It's not an overnight solution. This is a way of thinking. It's a mindset. Thinking about this regularly and how you might approach things, how you might apply your strengths, how you might build on them, and over time will create change for you. So take these 3 steps as guidance for a direction, and it's up to you to drive in that direction. So as I mentioned, change, progress, growth comes from application, from taking action. So I want you to write down 1 action you will take away with you today and make a note for yourself. Share it on the whiteboard, share it in the chat. If you want to use the whiteboard, you can again use the drop-down menu. The toolbar will come up and you click the text option instead of the stamp option and write down what you're going to take away with you, because strengths is huge and I could talk for hours about it and overload you all, but I've actually condensed this and made it quite specific so that there are some real meaningful actions that you can take from this to move forward. So please feel free to share. Be braver in one-to-ones and request feedback on perceived strengths. Yeah, that's a great one. Requesting feedback is in one-to-ones even. You know, what am I good at? What do you see are my strengths? What do you see I do differently than other people naturally? And giving feedback in one-to-one about strengths is really important. The people that you're talking to. We can sometimes as managers focus on, well, you need to improve this, but actually you're really good at this. How can you use that more? How can you build on that? Do you recognize how good you are at that? Review and understand what my strengths are. Yeah, I think that's the first place to start, is knowing your strengths. I'm leaving my company soon and will ask them their opinions on my strengths before I leave. Yes, great one to ask before you leave. People who have worked with you. And you've got those 7 questions will come after this workshop in an email, so you can pick maybe a handful of those. Just have a quick look at the chat. Would anyone else like to share, or in the chat or on the screen? Really commit to the process, a scary journey. Yeah, I think a lot of self-awareness can be a bit scary because you might not be sure what's going to show up, but you know, self-awareness is a really good first step to take. And it's especially, you know, it's the basis of developing emotional intelligence, being able to hold the scary and still go on the journey of self-awareness. Because once you have self-awareness, you can have self-management, and once you can manage yourself, you're winning. You can manage situations and people and environments. So I'm just having a look at the chat. Review information on the slides, begin to think about who to ask. Yeah, thinking about who to ask is a great one. Have those 5 names, and that's one step to knowing who to ask. Identify my strength in relation to the flow. Yeah, thinking about flow. That flow theory is great. And if you want to know more about that, you can Google it, and there's a lot there. Understand how my strengths can be utilized in my return to work after a gap, perhaps in a career change. Yep, that's how I did my career pivot, Patricia. I based it on my strengths. But you understand, after a return to work, after a gap at work, it can really affect your confidence, and you can forget your strengths, your skill sets. So actually starting to think about your strengths rather than what you've missed and how other people might have moved on and how you've lost your mojo. Think about, remember your strengths, get your confidence back, build your self-belief to go forward to return after work, which is not easy. The journey of self-awareness can really take you out of your comfort zone. Yep, yeah, it really can. It can. And that's a lot of, with coaching, I say this to sometimes when I'm working with clients and things get a bit there's a bit of discomfort. That's where the growth happens, in that moment of discomfort when you're not quite sure. There's a lot of growth that comes there. Not be in denial about my strengths and use them more positively. Yeah. Debs, I'm intrigued why you're in denial about your strengths. What are your strengths? That's a great one. Yeah, they are your strengths. They're your natural capabilities. They are part of you, and they will, you know, give you like tenfold if you focus on those versus focusing on things that aren't your natural capabilities. I will ask my boss how my boss perceives my strengths in my review. Yep, great. asking others and discovering strengths I might not be aware of. Great. Okay, so I want you to, again, write down what your action is. What is your insight? What are you taking away with you? And take that commitment to make a move. So let me just clear the screen. Okay, so the last thing to just say, and we'll go into discussion afterwards, but strengths come up a lot in my coaching. And I work with a lot of people who are feeling lost, they feel stuck, they're feeling dissatisfied in work or their career. I work with them to make those significant, meaningful shifts in their thinking, in behavior, in choices, so that they can make progress. And strengths is one element we might work on in a coaching session. So, and I have worked with lots of people returning to work, returning through redundancy, through career change, reworking career direction, feeling more happy, more motivated at work, dealing with pressure and stress at work, toxic bosses at work, navigating new jobs, promotions. So there's all sorts where something like a strengths-based approach can be one thing you can really do to create positive change for yourself. So think about where you want to be, for example, in the next few months, in September this year, and think about how you will get there. Think about the role that strengths can play in helping you get there. And if you would like to talk more with me as well, then I'd be very happy to. There's my email on the screen.
Great,
I'm going
thanks, Natasha.
stop
That's
the share.
yeah, that was really interesting. And I think what's so interesting about this is that most of us, when we're lacking in confidence, just concentrate on our weaknesses and we don't think about our strengths. And it's such a positive thing to do. We've all got strengths, and they're all, I reckon if we went round this group now, they'd all be different. But to concentrate on those instead of our weaknesses is a really excellent idea. So I'm going to go straight off and do that and ask my family. It'll be interesting to see if they all agree. Right, we haven't got any questions, but does anyone want to come off mute and actually say something, have some feedback, or maybe ask a specific question of Natasha, because this is your time. Yeah, so Neela, would you like to come off mute?
Yeah. Would you remind us what you said about the 80-20 rule? You were talking about avoiding going into overdrive. Could you just remind us what you said about that again?
Yes, sure. So I'm just going to put my volume up. So the 80-20 rule is about, Sarah, if you wouldn't mind just, if I can just, so I can see everyone, that would be great, just for a moment. Thank you. So the 80-20 rule is, it's kind of what Caroline was saying. We can have a real tendency to focus on our weaknesses. So flip that on its head. Focus 80% on your strengths and identifying them, applying them, building them. And the 80-20 rule is basically saying don't focus 100% on your strengths, because they can go into overdrive and then they can become energy drainers, or they can have negative side effects, if you like. They can have performance risks. And I gave some examples there. So, for example, I know that one of my strengths is being decisive. But if I use that strength too much, if I'm too decisive too quickly, I lose sight of any alternative options and the flexibility in bringing them into my thinking. So it's just about having a sense of, well, you can do one thing really well, but if you do it too well, or too much, sorry, it can perhaps have a negative rather than a positive.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I see what you. So it's once you've identified what they are, then it's just making sure you don't do it too much. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah.
Cheska, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I'm just interested. So when we're asking our 5 people for their feedback, how important is it to get a spectrum across sort of friends and work colleagues and other people? Because I think sometimes you get very different feedback from very different groups of people who obviously have their own personal view, good and bad of you, in different contexts.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have a view of all those versions of you, and for how different people see you in different environments. You could, of course, absolutely, if you were very set on figuring out something with your family, you can just ask your family. but you might get a lot of the same feedback and think that that is the only way that those are your only strengths.
Yeah, I'm thinking if you're somebody who may end up wanting to sort of pivot where they are professionally, then actually if you're in a professional space already, then people are going to slightly prejudge their answer. But if you can outside of that, then actually they can give you a slightly more 360.
Yeah, sorry, Jessica, there was a bit of background noise. You're saying that if you want to move something professionally.
Yeah, so if you were in the place where you wanted to shift professionally into a different career or take a completely different route, then if you're only asking the people you work with, then actually you're only going to get one point of view, whereas actually your sort of friends and family might have a very different perspective of your than your work colleagues.
Exactly. And these are your natural capabilities that will show up in different ways with different people. So getting the perspective of more, a bit like a 360, can give you just more information to work with.
Natasha, can I ask you a quick question, please? I think one of the things about asking for feedback is people want to be kind and not necessarily tell you what they truly think. Are there any tools online where you can ask for anonymous feedback? So you can send it out to a group and they can send feedback to you anonymously?
I don't know the answer to that, Manjit, but what I would say is about the questions that I shared today, they're positive questions and they're strengths-based questions. So it's going to be naturally asking people to give you feedback on the things that you're good at. That's the point of the strengths-based approach, that people will be focusing on the things that you are good at, the things that set you apart from other people. So it's not like feedback for perhaps in a performance appraisal where maybe that will be structured much differently. These are actually very positive questions that will get very positive answers by the nature of the approach.
Thank you.
I know Manjit, and I can't imagine anyone having anything negative to say about you. Just the loveliest person you'll ever come across. Right, anybody?
Thanks, Caroline.
We need to see each other in person rather than on a screen, please. Right, anybody else got anything they'd like to ask or feedback?
Yes, a couple of things. I thought that Francesca raised such an interesting point there about, particularly if someone's thinking about pivoting, changing direction and career path, that how too focused it could be by going directly to those people who you really work with. And it just sort of re-emphasizes, I think, the importance of going to someone like a coach, because it's an excellent place to start. And it almost sort of bridges the point between, those who are friends and family, in one context, and those people who know you in a professional context. So I think it reinforces why it's, this is a really important place to start. And then the second thing, just following on from what Manjit was saying about feedback, I always think that the important word in the giving back feedback is the word "it's give." And, so therefore it's given with kindness and thought and a real sense of, as you say, sort of positivity as well. So you shouldn't be afraid of asking for it.
Excellent.
Thank you, Sarah.
So is there anything else? If you're happier putting it in the chat anonymously, then you're very welcome to do that instead. So I can see a few people typing. Right, so lots of lovely feedback, great workshop. Thank you, Natasha, so insightful and helpful. I mean, do remember that Natasha did an equally great session a couple of months ago, and we do have it recorded. So if any of you are interested in listening to that, just drop me an email and I can send it to you. Thanks, Patricia, that's lovely. Really enjoyed this, found it incredibly helpful and motivating. Great. Okay, well, unless there's anything else, I'm going to hand back to Sarah to just finish up.
Just sharing the screen, then you've got everyone's contact details, etc. So thanks very much for that. The other thing I'd say, because there's been some quite helpful links put into the chat box, is please do remember to save the chat as well. And you'll know how to do that by just looking at that, the three little dots at the bottom of your screen in the chat area. And so you'll be able to save it that way. Natasha, thank you very much. I know you did a talk for us about, I think it was about 3 months ago, which, as Caroline said, was equally interesting, and I think just very, very thought-provoking. And it's like you're taking a moment out in your day to stop, to consider, to really reflect on how you can take something like this and move forward. And remember, we'll send you a recording of this talk. As Caroline said, we can send you a recording of the previous talk as well, if you don't already have that. And we will subscribe you to both Natasha's email list and also register you as members of Really Helpful Club. We'll share those links as well in the after event communications. And any questions, as ever, please do contact Caroline. Please do pop onto the website regularly and look out for what's going on, and also to access some of Natasha's excellent blog articles on there as well. She really does share, very generously her insights. And I think, look, we've all committed. We've all put our hands up and said we're going to do something from this. So now's your sort of moment of, actually got to go and do something about it. But remember, as your goal is to be happier, then the first step is to take some action. And one of those steps could be to follow up with someone like Natasha for some sort of session with her, and exploring coaching is a great place to start. So please do feel able to contact her by email, through us if you want to do so, to be able to book that strategy call. This could be your next step towards finding that happiness and identifying those strengths that will help you to move forward in your career and other aspects of your life. So thank you very much for your time. We will leave it there and send you a recording in due course. Thanks so much for engaging.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.